Welcome back to our channel. In the thick of America's post-war boom, amidst the hum of industry and the steady rhythm of a hopeful nation, the presses of the United States Mint clattered tirelessly. It was 1954, and though much of the world was changing, televisions glowing in living rooms, rockets beginning to defy gravity, and culture itself tilting on its axis, one thing remained familiar: the copper penny. A humble coin, wheat stalks etched on its reverse, like a quiet nod to America's agrarian roots, bearing Lincoln's solemn profile on its front, circulated freely in the pockets of millions. Most pennies were mundane, mass-produced, silent passengers in everyday transactions. But among them, one slipped through the strict protocols of minting that would later command attention not just for what it was, but for what went inexplicably wrong. The Philadelphia Mint had handled billions of coins by then, operating with mechanical precision. That year, 71,873,351 coins were struck at Philadelphia alone, a staggering figure meant to feed the growing hunger for cash and an expanding economy. The 1954 wheat penny should have been unremarkable, like its countless siblings. Yet, inside the belly of the mint, under the rhythmic pounding of dies and planchets, something happened that would escape even the keen eyes of inspectors, something that would rest quietly in obscurity for decades. It was years later, long after the wheat stalks were replaced by the Lincoln Memorial in 1959, that an unsuspecting collector at a flea market in Ohio came across a weathered penny in a cigar box of loose change. He wasn't looking for anything special that day. No great treasure hunt. Just the casual thrill of finding a sharp strike or an unusual luster. What caught his eye wasn't shine or perfection, but oddity. A 1954 wheat penny, yes, but the 4 in the date looked off. Not doubled. Not faded. Just wrong. He examined it closely, furrowing his brow. The more he stared, the more questions it raised. The coin looked like it had aged naturally, but the minting seemed misaligned. Slightly, but enough to make his heart skip. He took it home, slipping it into a velvet case, unaware that this penny would soon haunt his dreams. He wasn't a wealthy collector, just someone with a passion, a deep respect for the artistry of coins. But the longer he held it, the more he sensed this piece might be hiding something beneath its copper surface. Late at night, under magnification, the secrets began to unfurl. The lettering around, "In God We Trust," was subtly doubled, but not in a way consistent with machine bounce or damage. The L.N. Liberty had an awkward, ghost-like shadow. There was no mint mark, confirming it came from Philadelphia, where oversight was considered stricter. So how had this happened? He compared it against hundreds of other 1954 cents, searching for matches, scouring coin forums, poring through auction records. Time passed. Months became years. But the coin refused to be ordinary. Experts he reached out to initially dismissed it as post-mint damage. Yet, when the coin was sent for third-party grading, the conversation shifted. The coin was returned not only authenticated but marked as a confirmed off-center strike with a partial brockage. A freak accident of pressure and timing. It had been struck off-center by about 15%, the lower right edge clipped. Even more remarkable, a ghostly image of Lincoln's profile was stamped on the reverse side, a partial brockage error, where the previous coin had failed to eject before this one was struck. These types of errors were rare in 1954. Quality control at the time, especially in Philadelphia, was tight. Off-center strikes happened, but to have one combined with a brockage? And for it to survive circulation, unnoticed for decades? That made it almost mythic. This wasn't a die clash or a simple double die. This was the result of pure minting chaos, timing, pressure, and material colliding in a singular moment that no machine was supposed to allow. The collector's modest collection suddenly felt like it had a crown jewel. But he kept quiet. At coin shows, he'd show it to others in whispers, gauging reactions, collecting opinions. Some gasped. Others questioned its authenticity, despite certification. That disbelief was part of its allure. Few had ever seen a 1954 wheat penny. With such an error, fewer still had held one. Whispers began to circulate. Stories of other off-center 1954 pennies, some with clipped planchets, others with light doubling. But none quite like his. The coin was unique, uneasy in its imperfection, perfect in its rarity. Over time, the penny's value evolved. In the early 2000s, error coins gained new prominence among collectors. The internet had made it easier to track anomalies, and what was once obscure could now be appreciated at scale. The collector received his first offer quietly, $2,000, from a known numismatist. He declined, not for greed, but because something about the coin felt unfinished, its story still unfolding. He waited and waited. Then, in 2011, an auction house specializing in error coins reached out. They had traced mentions of his penny through niche blogs and coin forums, curious about its existence. He hesitated, unsure if it was time. But curiosity won. The coin was submitted under a pseudonym. When it appeared in the catalog, it was listed simply as 1954 1C, off-center strike W/reverse brockage, AU details. No origin story. No drama. Just cold facts. And yet, collectors buzzed. Because the coin was real. Visible. And the twist? The twist was discovered during auction catalog photography. Under extreme magnification and spectral analysis, a hidden detail emerged, one that even the collector hadn't noticed. Within the brockage on the reverse, part of the letter G from God was faintly visible, pressed backward, upside down, and raised. A microghost impression, believed to have transferred from a previously stuck coin in a rare triple strike phenomenon. It wasn't just a brockage, it was evidence of a sequential minting failure. 3 coins layered in error, compressed in time. A mechanical stutter of the minting process, recorded forever in copper. This discovery turned the auction into an event. Bidders called in from across the globe. What was estimated at $3,000 opened at $6,500. By the third bid, it surpassed $10,000. Voices on the phones grew tense. A private collector from California pushed it to $18,000. Then $23,000. Then a silence. A final offer, $29,500. Sold. The collector watched it all unfold, stunned not by the price, but by the fact that his quiet mystery had sparked a bidding war. What had once sat forgotten in a flea market cigar box had now become a legend. Not because it glittered, not because it bore a famous face or a pristine luster, but because it failed beautifully. The coin's imperfection told a story no perfect coin ever could. It spoke of chaos within a system of order, of overlooked anomalies in a world built on precision. It became a symbol of numismatic curiosity, a case study in how even a cent so easily dismissed can hold secrets deeper than gold. The collector never stopped hunting after that. But he never found anything quite like the 1954 error again. Some say he still visits small markets, still peers into piles of pocket change, wondering if another fluke of history might lie beneath the dust. Others say he quietly bought the coin back a few years later from a private estate sale, unwilling to let it go again. The truth, like the coin's origin, remains half-guessed, layered in copper mystery. But somewhere, out there, one imperfect penny still whispers of the day a machine blinked and left behind something extraordinary. In the still, mechanical rhythm of the mid-1950s, as America leaned into its post-war prosperity, the presses at the Philadelphia Mint moved with ceaseless precision. Each thunderous strike shaped tiny rounds of copper into the familiar visage of Abraham Lincoln, bordered by the words that echoed the nation's faith and identity. It was 1955, and like every other year before it, the Lincoln wheat penny flowed in staggering numbers, more than 330 million coins issued. But beneath the surface of this mass production, deep inside the machinery of perfection, something unraveled that no eye was supposed to witness. The year itself was unremarkable to most. Suburban homes rose by the thousands, Elvis Presley was on the radio, and color television crept into living rooms. Life was orderly. But amid this era of order, the 1955 Lincoln set bore the silent echo of a minting mistake so dramatic, so unmistakable, that it would come to define the year in numismatic history. Though none knew it yet, a handful of these pennies born from a momentary lapse between minting dies would become symbols of imperfection made iconic. The error wasn't subtle. It didn't hide behind shadows or require a microscope. It screamed from the coin's surface, bold and unapologetic. But at the time, no one noticed. The mint certainly didn't. Somewhere in the rush of night shifts or the clamor of machines, a pair of dies became misaligned, slightly but fatally. As the upper and lower dies clashed and struck the copper planchets, they did so off-register, resulting in a striking misprint. The entire date and motto on the obverse appeared doubled. Every letter, every numeral distinctly echoed, as if a ghost had tried to engrave over the original. Estimated around 20,000 to 24,000 to enter circulation unnoticed. No alarms. No stoppages. These flawed coins left Philadelphia in sacks, mingling with perfect specimens, vanishing into pockets and cash drawers across the northeastern United States. And for a time, the world remained unaware. Then came a quiet morning in Brooklyn, when a man sorting through his change for a cup of coffee saw something odd. He paused. The coin was redder than the rest, slightly shinier perhaps, but what struck him most was the date, 1955. It looked doubled. He turned it in the light. The words, "Liberty" and "In God We Trust," shimmered with a ghostly repetition. It wasn't his imagination. This penny looked as though it had been printed twice. That man wasn't a collector. Not yet. But he showed it to a friend who was. The friend's expression froze. He asked to keep the coin overnight. Under magnification, the evidence became undeniable. This was no mechanical damage or after-mint tampering. This was a true double die in error at the die creation stage, when a working die had shifted slightly during its hubbing, the process that impresses the design onto the die itself. Unlike machine doubling, which is flat and shallow, this was rounded and sharp proof that something had gone awry at the very heart of the minting process. Soon, coin shops were abuzz. Dealers began checking their 1955 pennies, turning over bank rolls in dim basements, hoping to catch lightning in copper. The rarity of the coin, paired with the boldness of its error, sparked something primal in collectors, the thrill of discovery. Each found specimen told a story of survival. Some had been passed hand to hand for years, spit on candy and gasoline, their value unknown to all who held them. But slowly, awareness spread. In the 1960s, the 1955 double die set exploded in popularity. It was dramatic, easy to spot, and carried the mystique of a mint slip-up. Values began to rise. What was once a penny fetched $10, then $20, then $100. Coin magazines wrote about it with reverence. Collectors debated the exact number that might exist in high grade. And through it all, the original specimens, those with sharp detail, minimal wear, and original luster, became the holy grail of wheat cents. One collector in Pennsylvania, who had inherited rolls of coins from his father, stumbled upon 3 of them nestled together in a paper tube. The coins had never seen circulation. His father, a coin-savvy mailman, had noticed the error early and squirreled them away, perhaps unsure of their fate. When the Sun brought them to a national coin show in the early 1980s, the buzz was instant. Each coin was graded by a top-tier service and came back with blazing scores. One earned MS-65 rated gem condition for such a coin. That single piece sold quietly to a private collector for $6,000. In today's market, a comparable specimen could command over $25,000. But that wasn't the real twist. The twist came decades later, when a fresh discovery shocked even the most seasoned experts. A 1955 double die set turned up, but this one was on a bronze planchet that weighed slightly more than usual. Under careful analysis, metallurgists discovered a minor anomaly in the alloy mixture. It wasn't enough to make it a different coin legally, but it made the surface behave differently. The coin developed a unique toning pattern, hints of violet and golden hues dancing across Lincoln's profile. Whether due to its chemical balance or the conditions it had been stored in, it was like no other. Graded and authenticated, it stunned the auction scene in 2022 by reaching a staggering price, $58,000. And so, what began as a quiet mishap at the Philadelphia Mint evolved into legend. Unlike subtle errors, this one didn't whisper. It roared. Yet what truly elevated it wasn't just the mistake, it was the story that followed. The moments it passed through hands unnoticed, the thrill of its discovery, the years it grew in renown, and the rare, radiant variants that emerged much later. Today, the 1955 double-die Lincoln wheat penny stands as one of the most famous era coins in American history. Low-grade examples still surface from time to time, fetching hundreds. Mid-grade pieces move in the thousands. But those in mint stay true gems with glowing copper surfaces, and razor-sharp doubling can command values from $20,000 to $50,000. And the rarest of the rare, those with exceptional eye appeal or unusual provenance, have topped $60,000 for a coin that began life as a mistake, struck in haste, and released in error. The 1955 double die set became something more. A monument to the beauty of imperfection. A reminder that sometimes, it's the things that weren't supposed to happen that leave the deepest mark. The Philadelphia Mint in 1957 was a hive of activity. The demand for coins had grown with the booming post-war economy, and machines were under constant pressure to meet the need. Pennies, copper Lincoln wheat cents, poured from the presses by the hundreds of millions. At first glance, the 1957 wheat penny didn't appear extraordinary. It carried the familiar features Americans had known for decades: Lincoln's solemn face on the obverse and two elegant wheat stalks flanking the words, 1 cent, on the reverse. It was common, ordinary, predictable. Or so it seemed. But in the relentless rhythm of the minting process, tiny imperfections have a way of sneaking through. A slightly misaligned die, a reused mint-mark punch, or a worn die surface can introduce details so subtle that they're missed for years. These aren't glaring mistakes, but faint fingerprints of mechanical wear and human oversight. In 1957, such flaws quietly emerged, waiting to be discovered by the eyes that knew how to look. The quiet beginnings of the story came not from a seasoned collector, but from a young boy in the early 1960s, rummaging through change on a kitchen table in Kansas. He had taken to saving wheat pennies, unaware that one of them, the one with a strange shadow behind the date, would hold a mystery. That coin was tucked away into a small paper envelope, forgotten for nearly 40 years. Decades later, that boy, now a man, rediscovered his old collection in a weathered cigar box in his attic. As he flipped through the envelopes, that same penny caught his attention again. Under a magnifying glass, it was clearer than ever. The numbers in 1957 appeared to double, almost as if echoing themselves. A second look at Liberty confirmed his suspicion. It wasn't damage. It was a double die. Word of this variant started spreading among collectors. Forums lit up with grainy photos and theories. It was number 1955 type doubling, no dramatic separation of letters, but it was there. Enough to matter. Enough to intrigue. Soon, other varieties were reported. Some 1957 D coins showed strong evidence of repunched mint marks, little tails of extra Ds peeking out beside the main one, caused by a slight shift during the punching process. In some cases, the D looked almost ghostly, the shadow of its first imprint still visible. And in extremely rare examples, obverse and reverse die clashes revealed ghost images of Lincoln bleeding into the wheat stalks, a haunting image of a president's silhouette pressed into the heart of his coin. The mint, under pressure to increase efficiency, had pushed some of its equipment past its limits. Dies were reused longer than they should have been. The result was not dramatic at first glance, but persistent and cumulative tiny errors, emerging from tired tools and relentless deadlines. Then came a surprise no one expected. In 2014, a coin dealer in Oregon, while reviewing a batch of old rolls, noticed something unusual. One of the pennies was lighter, felt thinner. It clinked differently on the counter. Intrigued, he sent it off for testing. It turned out to be a 1957 wheat cent struck on a foreign planchet, possibly one intended for a U.S. mint contract with another country. The dimensions and metal content were off. Though the coin had circulated slightly, its strike was clean enough to preserve the major details. It was verified and authenticated, becoming one of the few known off-metal strikes of that year. It later sold for $16,000. Suddenly, 1957 was no longer just a common date in wheat penny collecting. It was a field of possibilities. Collectors scoured old bags, bank rolls, and mint sets, re-examining what they had once overlooked. Subtle double dies and minor misalignments became the focus of intense scrutiny. Even the cleanest 1957 coins in mint state condition, those still gleaming red with original luster, began commanding attention. Some were found to be nearly flawless, with sharp strikes and perfectly centered rims. In auctions, these top-grade coins started edging higher in price, especially when combined with an error. Through all this, the coin's journey from routine to revered unfolded slowly and organically. It wasn't a single dramatic discovery that changed its fate, but a series of small moments, one collector after another noticing something different, something unexpected. A whisper, not a shout. By the time professional grading services began formally attributing 1957 double dies and repunched mint marks, values had already started climbing. A simple wheat penny in high-grade red condition could bring in $25 to $60. But add in a double die obverse, and you're looking at values between $1,200 and $3,000 depending on condition. Combine that with a rare repunched mint mark, and the price could double. But the real showstopper, the 1957 wheat penny struck on a foreign planchet in mint state condition, holds the record, having sold for $16,500 at auction. From obscurity to spotlight, the 1957 wheat penny proved that even the most unassuming coin can carry a secret worth discovering.